So welcome back to DC Silver Age Storytime, and today's story comes from Superboy, number 90, published in July 1961 with an unknown writer and art by George Papp. When I first saw Clark switching to Superboy, I thought it was an illusion, but now after using my amateur detective skills to take his fingerprints and Bertillon measurements, there's no doubt that Clark Kent and Superboy are the same. And now that I know Clark's secret, I must protect his identity. That never happens in the story. Superboy has often said that he can't make close friends with anyone because he doesn't dare risk exposing his secret. Who did discover his identity would be in constant danger from evildoers. But as fate decrees, one day an outsider does learn his vital secret, none other than Pete Ross, Clark's only close friend. What will happen now? Will Pete betray Superboy? Will he imperil his own life because of his knowledge? Learn the amazing answers in the story of Pete Ross's super secret. One Saturday morning in Smallville, as Clark Kent receives a phone call. Hello, Clark. This is Pete Ross. What are you doing, pal? Starting my leaf collection for the science project that's due in school next month. I suppose you're busy with the rock and mineral collection you promised to bring in. Yes, but that's not why I called, Clark. How about roller skating this afternoon? I've got 2 passes. That's very generous of you, Pete, but I don't know. I shouldn't tie myself up with an appointment. Some emergency may come up where I may have to switch suddenly to Superboy. But Ma Kent comes in. Look, son, you haven't spent much time recently with Pete, and he's your best friend. If an emergency arises, you'll figure out some way to leave unnoticed. Okay, Pete, it's a date. I'll meet you there. So they go to the roller skate alley and or the rink, and Pete meets one of his friends there. Hey, Pete, you're just the guy I want to see. How'd you like to wear this skeleton costume at a big masquerade party I'm throwing tonight? I'd like it fine, Joe. Good. This party will be a real blowout. Great food, private orchestra, door prizes, and terrific costumes for everybody. But I don't want you to bring that drip Clark Kent. So Clark overhears with his super hearing, even though they're only a few feet away. But Pete says, oh, I see. Well, in that case, count me out. Joe, Clark Kent is my best friend, and I wouldn't think of going without him. You're crazy, Pete, to pick up that timid bookworm for a buddy. Remember, if you don't come without Kent, I'll scratch you off my guest list permanently. But Pete Ross does not change his mind. Clark asks, says, I saw you speaking to those fellows. What did they want? Nothing much, Clark. Let's talk. Let's not waste time talking about them. Here's your hot dog. So Clark is very happy with Pete that Pete stood up for him. They go out to have lunch and hear on the radio, calling Superboy. This is the Smallville Police, a mine guard who inspects the abandoned mine foundations upon which the south end of Smallville is built, reports gas explosions. Will Superboy investigate at once? I'd better take a peek with my X-ray vision. So he takes a look and spots an explosion and decides to go to investigate, see if there's more problems. Look, there's Superboy now answering the distress call. He's below the surface. There may be other gas pockets below. If I don't prevent a chain reaction series of explosions, the old shaft supports might collapse under these buildings. So he digs down but discovers no more problems. Nice work, Superboy, but tell me, when will you break down and tell people who you really are? But he says, never. You're just trying to scare us. So he says that if anyone learned his secret, it would threaten their lives. No, Lana, I agree with Superboy. Whoever knew his secret identity could be in constant peril. Pete would understand. He's so grown up and logical. Meanwhile, under the shaft, some criminals are gloating because they tricked Superboy into digging a tunnel, and they're going to use that tunnel to break into the Smallville National Vault and steal fortune. Later, Clark and Pete go on an overnight hike. After we set up the tent, Clark will eat supper. Gosh, I'm having a swell time. My life used to be so lonely and companionless. I'm glad I didn't avoid a close friendship with Pete for fear that he might discover my secret identity. However, that night, Clark hears the tweet of a train over an emergency. The train derailed and all the animals are escaping. So Clark decides to change into Superboy as Pete sleeps, but a lightning flash awakens Pete, and he's able to see Clark changing. After I put these roaring cats back in their cages, I'll drag your train to a clear stretch of track. Thanks, Superboy. We'd be lost without you. Now he's switching back to his Clark Kent identity. So Clark is Superboy, just as some people have suspected. but I'll never betray him, nor even tell Clark. I know he mustn't be disturbed or hampered in any way by my knowledge. So he spies on Clark's house. I might have imagined everything I saw, so I'd better use my detective skill to get further evidence. I'll watch the Kent house from these woods till I see something that proves the events of last night. And he spots Superboy emerging from the ground, and then Pete goes into the tunnel and sees Ma Kent talking to the Clark Kent robots. I was right. Well, the Superboy robots. I was right. The tunnel leads directly to the basement of the Kent house. Uh-oh, there's Mrs. Kent. Mom, this is Clark again, talking to you by superventriloquism. I'll still be busy for another hour helping a teacher after school. Take your time, son. I activated and sent your number one robot, Superboy robot, out on patrol, as you asked me to before. You can recall the robot when you come home. Okay, Mom, I hear you perfectly with my super hearing. See you later. So that's how Clark works it when he's at school. What people often think is Superboy is a robot. That's how Clark can be in two places at once. That gives me an idea. I'm no robot, but maybe I too could become Superboy in an emergency. But why? So he goes around and gathers cloths to make his own Superboy costume. Not bad for an amateur seamstress like me. I'll start carrying this costume around in my school bag, along with some makeup in case an occasion arises where I can do some good by impersonating Superboy. So that's kind of silly. So he and Clark are once again out, and they spot a huge telescope that has snapped its chains and is falling. So Pete just pretends like the falling telescope caused a reflection in his eyes and he can't see. Gosh, what a lucky break. So he changes right in front of Pete, although Pete's rubbing his eyes. In the next few seconds, while he's rubbing his temporarily blinded eyes, I can catch the lens before it shatters on the canyon floor. So he does. Pete's happy that he was able to help out. How are your eyes now, Pete? Is your vision clearing up? Not yet, Clark. It's still very blurry. I'll recover fully after Superboy changes back to Clark Kent. I'm so glad I was able to help him. Now that supper is finished, would you like to look at my Superboy souvenirs? Gosh, could I? I do envy you being friendly with Superboy. He's a terrific person. So Clark tells him that he can help out and introduce him to Superboy. So the next day, Superboy shows up. Hi, Pete. I ran into Clark Kent this morning. He told me you'd like to spend some time with me. How would you like a bird's eye view of Smallville? You mean fly around with you? I'd love to. So he carries Pete off, and they pass the U.S. artillery firing range. They fired a shot at target 3 miles away. Watch what happens, Pete. I'm afraid to look. So Superboy matches speed, or he flies through the target even before the missile strikes. Whew. It's fun being with Clark Kent, but we can never do anything like this. I'm almost jealous of Superboy that he can arouse so much more admiration in Pete than I can as Clark Kent. Oh well, I suppose it's only normal for Pete to feel this way. Later at school, or the following day, that must be Superboy robot flying past because Clark is at the blackboard, which reminds me, I must break a swimming date with Clark today. Superboy told me yesterday that big city gangsters were spotted in town, and I'm sure Clark wants to be free to look for them. Clark seemed to be relieved when I broke our swimming date. Now he can hunt down those crooks on foot. He can hunt down those crooks on foot while his robot patrols by air. Okay. As for me, I'll scour the mine for minerals to add to my collection. But he accidentally runs across the criminals, and Superboy comes in but starts to have difficulties because it is one of the robots. Those noises, it's not Superboy. It's a robot, and he's in trouble. The rays from this magnetic rock are interfering with his sensitive mechanism. He's struggling back to the surface. The criminals will escape. So he decides to put on the Superboy costume and throws a piece of magnesium at the fire to give the impression he's using his heat vision or X-ray vision. Superboy's heat vision made the dying embers of our fire burst into flame. Don't hurt us, Superboy. We'll surrender to the police upstairs. The hoods were so shocked to see me appear they didn't notice I tossed magnesium powder from my mineral collection into the fire. Magnesium is a metal that burns with blinding light. The next day, as Pete meets Clark. How about this headline, eh, Pete? Only I knew Superboy was a robot. The robot told me he had been temporarily affected by magnetic rot, but the very sight of him must have terrified the Hoods, because when he finally managed to surface, the crooks were already in custody. Yes, Clark, Superboy sure got the job done. So that is the story where Pete Ross discovers Superboy's secret identity.